civilization lasted so long?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like that was around like 2500 BC,
Hey,
but the other ones were at like 5000, 6000 BC.
I would like to
Alright.
share.
What caused the
I would like to share two things. One, pterodactyl's wingspans
Yeah, oh yeah,
is
because
just 6 feet long.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
One wing.
One wing is 6 feet long.
6 floating, I think, all the way across. That was big.
No, actually,
That was
yeah.
barely, that's when they got learned society.
Okay.
Anyway,
I thought
it
it was-
doesn't matter. Second thing, I learned what a derivative was.
Perfect. All right, hey.
It
Here's
took me a
how-
long
hey.
time, but I did.
Hey, good thing is, you have your paper out, your notebook. Don't worry about any paper. What I want you to do right now, just summary your notes. I don't know if the definition is.
Thank you, because I literally
What if I already have it?
If you have a definition of derivative, not mine, I want you to explain it in
No, I
your
actually
words.
have
I know. I want you to explain it in your own words. If you were explaining it to your parents, what is a derivative? Not your mom. Your
Okay,
mom
can
knows.
you give me a second?
But you need to.
Can
You
you give
need
me time that I would explain this to my parents though?
you need to explain to them about what we're doing in class and why you don't know what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So a derivative. I want to know the definition if you're explaining it to your parents. To your parents. Now,
Mom gets confused when I bring up anything more complicated than
no option. You have to explain it to them. Now, I want correct punctuation, capital letters, all that good stuff.
What? It's a definition you pull.
No. I want it. You're explaining it to them.
my note.
I want it written in correct punctuation. So you have 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna read
Wait, so do I read it as a sentence?
out loud.
Do I read it as a sentence then?
What?
I mean, do I write it as a sentence?
Yes, for full sentence format.
Mr. Ward, well, you could have told me that
I'm
before
giving you
I go.
5 minutes.
Mr. Ward, do you want to know something funny?
Yeah.
Okay, so I told my mom, I said, we're doing derivatives in S, and I did it, and so I like it, and something else, and she goes, and she thought it was funny, and I said, I know, I'm really yeah, I'm
I don't get how you can have more than one. I don't know what prime is.
What's
either.
your favorite ancient
Prime is a
civilization?
little dash.
These are good things.
I know what prime, the dash is, I don't know what that means. What is the dash?
Oh,
Oh, because prime numbers can get divided by anything else, so
Who were
prime
the
is.
ones that came up with
That's
the
not what that is.
Trojans? The Greeks? Was it the Greeks? Sparta.
But yeah, I was doing my homework
That
and
is
then
hilarious.
I finally realized derivative.
The Athenians?
Okay, so Mara, just to explain, what I like to do in your notes, don't tear this out, just think in your notes. I want you to write in 5 minutes, full sentence format, capital letters, everything. How do you explain what a derivative is to your parents?
I don't know.
Mr. Ward.
I didn't explain it myself.
Take time, take 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Try to write out something that would maybe
I think we need
click.
10 maybe.
5.
I need
What is your
to.
favorite Greek city-state?
No, hey, I want you to write
I
it.
already wrote it.
So your parents would understand it?
Yes. No, my parents wouldn't understand no matter how I wrote
You
it.
need to
My dad
explain it
is
so
a-
they will understand.
No.
Hey, no, hey, you gotta get ready.
That's kind of basically what
Will you yell louder if I capitalize this word?
Yes.
No, but Mr. Ward, what is your favorite Greek city-state?
And
Do you prefer the Athenians, the
Is this in your notes or
Trojans?
not in your notes?
In your
Spartans.
notes.
Aren't the Trojans from like
Troy.
Troy? Troy's pretty sweet.
Why?
Troy.
The fall of Troy.
Pretty sure all of
Yeah,
them.
really.
Yeah.
Athens is still going on.
My dad doesn't know
Yeah,
the
but not
difference
as a
between a
city
thesis and a
state.
conclusion.
Wow.
Paper, so I don't think I'll understand.
I don't understand.
I asked my dad.
Wait, we have that hand
My
list?
dad,
No,
and
we
he
just
just
don't
wasn't,
tear it out.
he gave me an overall solution of what
Is that good?
I freaking
I don't know if your parents would know how to do it.
Well, of course they don't know how to do it.
Well, you want me to,
Mr. Ward,
you said these words.
Mr. Ward, I will read one out loud to you. The point
I
I'm saying is
don't want you to read it out loud. I'll look at it. I want to see your definition.
I don't know what slope means.
You
Like, I
prefer
know what it
gladiators
means, but I
rather
know
than humans
about
or
it.
human?
How would you explain slope? Is it?
Let's pick one probably. Please give me an
The curve of the line?
You know, a lot of armor is
Well, I know derivative. I said derivative is the slope at a specific point on a long
What about
line.
armor?
And he's like, good, but do they know what those words mean? And I was like,
Okay, right, not a bad definition, but here's the thing. Would your parents understand what
Yes.
you just used?
Yeah, parents are both.
We both have the rest.
Right?
Explain a little more.
Mr. Rock, I can't say
He'd
mine.
be like, oh, slope, I remember that.
Be more specific.
I put this little thing in for emphasis.
explain what those terms mean, because I don't think your parents would understand what that word, that
That's why
term means.
parents are secretly
No,
dying.
no, no.
My mom.
This is unfair. Nicole's mom is a math teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole can just write
Derivative.
derivative.
You know more about it than I
Explain
do.
what that formula is, like what you're doing, like what is that, what are those symbols you're doing?
Oh,
If
yeah.
I were
You
to
know
go
what
to
you see the
school,
last sentence? Don't ask anymore, because I don't
I
know.
will call my dad right now. and see
You wrote
if he
this
knows
now.
if you want me
You
to.
gotta at least explain what this is.
I don't know what it is, I just know the
You
formula
don't
is
know
like a
what
ski
that-
course.
Slope is the
F.
rate.
We at least know that, explain that.
F is a letter.
I know, wait, they'll figure it out.
The sixth letter of the
It's like a
alphabet.
ski course. I just put F as F.
Mr.
No,
Wood.
my last sentence is don't ask me
Explain
any
what that
questions,
is.
because I
Give me your
don't know.
How would you describe
Explain
slope?
what these.
Is the rate of graph
How would you describe it?
How would you describe it?
But like that hurt for me to do that, so.
Okay, explain what that.
Crazy.
I wrote a whole paragraph.
How would you describe slope? Roller coaster
Can you
thing.
want me to write more?
Bingo.
Oh, are you putting them
Slope
on? Well, I wrote
slope is when a line
Maybe
is
she
like
heard from you.
tilted.
I went
And you gotta find.
Okay.
Yeah.
how
I'll
that's
find
slope.
it for anybody really.
Alright, you explain that.
He's reading them out loud.
Because I'm-
That drop shot though.
Hey, let's assume that you did. You're gonna have to explain that word a little bit further, because they might not know what that word means. And you'd have to explain this thing or what why you wrote that word.
You used too many words. They're right there.
I don't know how to describe the word
Okay,
slope.
alright, if anyone wants me to look at theirs, I wanna see it
I
here
would
in a little
love for
bit.
you to look at
Mr.
mine.
Warren, how are you see mine again?
Wait, why do I need you?
Mr. Warren,
Why
no
do I
changes,
need
but I want
you?
to see it.
Then why do I need you to see it
Just
right now?
like
Because
a
I'm
ski
gonna
course.
ask you to
I
go
don't
now.
care.
It's a math thing.
No, not me. But this is how I'm explaining it. You should put your input in it. Okay, so what I'm talking to my parents, I'm explaining is derivative, you're gonna be there and someone telling me that's wrong.
Because I know.
Really? You want to tell me, try telling me that's, no, this is mine. Look at it.
Up and down on the
Hey, guys.
Hey, there, be quiet.
So there's some
If I
long,
started
there's a
spinning
long
like
formula
Georgia,
that we
one
use.
that-
I don't know.
Hey,
The formula is. What the formula is. Don't ask me more questions.
I mean, what do you think you want me to, I
Yeah, I
have
said
to
F is F, X is X,
Explain
and H is H.
Oh, I feel wish to
Explain it further.
Mr. Warren, Did you put on
Why you don't
the
need to-
horizontal asymptote is rather squishy?
It's selectively
I said-
terminated.
Do I know
Mr. Warren,
where
I
you
corrected it.
corrected
I said,
criticism?
what do you, if you could be.
It needs to be more
what would you want
specific
to
in
do?
terms of,
He said,
like, I'm pretty sure you're gonna be like,
And he said, yes, I want you to.
I'm gonna keep you on the list if you did know what it was, not gonna been.
This is Mr. Ward guy, he should not be hired.
Good. My grandpa's a math.
I told him to yell if I
that
capitalize
face.
No, if anything, you need perfect now.
I
Yeah,
can't
I'm
help
sure
it.
I don't use my first name. It's Mr. Ward.
Ooh, that's good.
He just said that was good, and he's smart. Look how smart he is. He's wearing glasses.
Oh, you say I'm not smart?
You think we're both stupid?
Mr. Young,
Throw me into the consideration. He thinks I'm-
Okay, honestly, this is all dumb though. When
You
you're
just want me
really
to
I
dumb.
want to start crying. Oh my god, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm so stupid.
Oh, no, I'm already.
Don't make that face. My parents know what skiing is.
No, what is it?
Mr. Ward, is
I
that
think I'm stupid.
Mr. Ward, no, it's not.
We're thinking it's not
He's
his
the
letter.
one who-
I know, but he
I'm
looked
gonna
at me
see
funny and
average
was like,
student at Britain.
and then he was like,
Mr. Ward, it's my
I
favorite.
don't care if I'm good at it.
Justice.
Stupid.
F is F, X is X, and H is H, and so we learned in school, so it's correct.
Did you start it?
Mr. Ward
Honestly,
walk is,
if I was explaining it to my mom, I'd just start crying and be like,
Why would you be explaining it to your mom?
That's actually not
Mr. Ward.
Can you read my first one?
Well, use the Google machine to properly. I added one more sentence. I added one more sentence.
Justin, only call it Mr. Ward.
What do you think of the Great Wall of China?
Four things about
In 20 words or less.
Alright, hey,
Great Wall's my favorite wall.
here's what I want.
It is big.
Okay, alright, I'm gonna just grab one at random here.
Oh, you so I'm
Because
stupid.
that's how you were looking away. Alright, here we go. Okay, hey, here's what I like to do. If you like something on this, I want you to add it to your paper. So here's what we have.
Oh, God.
Okay,
Is that word for word?
so derivative is the slope at one specific point on the line.
That's
So,
what I have.
so it's slope at one specific point on the line. The slope is the increasing or decreasing curve of a line on a graph. Okay? So if you like anything on there, I want you to add it. I want you to add it to yours if you like that. If that explains something more. Okay, somebody else.
Mr. Ward, would you like to read
I need my definition,
Or-
I'm writing down separate.
Now, okay. Derivative is a math thing. It's the thing it's the thing kind of on a graph for the slope of curves, or in parenthesis, rate of change. Function is a thingy that shows some stuff. Those are Mr. Ward's exact definitions. No. Alright, so, okay, I'll get this. Alright, here we go. So if you want to add this to your definition, the slope of any given spot on a curve, the slope of any given spot on a curved line on a graph. The slope is the average angle that a line is going.
That was too much, too many big.
Or you can read mine, mine's really good.
Mine's really long.
Mom,
Trust me.
No.
or
Alright. I'll get yours here in a second. Hey, which one am I gonna read?
mine.
Okay, alright.
You can read mine.
The slope of any given point on a graph, the slope is like a ski course moving up and down. Mr. Ward prefers, I can read that.
Mine out loud.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
Sorry, Mom, I don't know what the heck a derivative is. Please don't kick me out of the house. I just really don't know. I'm too tired to pay attention. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. I just don't. Okay, whatever. I'm good at making quotes though, so when I become homeless, because I don't know what to do, I won't be cold.
At least you've already accepted it. Alright, so, alright. It is a long formula that we use to find something in calculus. Pretty sure it's some form of an average. The formula is f of x plus h minus f of x over h. Don't know any more questions because I don't know. F is f1, x is x1, and h is an h.
No, that's a comma, not a one.
Oh, that's a comma, sorry. Lots of commas there. We learned it in school, so it's correct. It's the slope of a curve. Alright, anyone else want me to read theirs?
You can read mine if you
I
want.
could
Okay,
add some
you.
stuff that you.
Alright, so hey, I want you to add something that you kind of like to yours. So, the
I don't
derivative.
like any.
You can say exactly.
Okay, alright. The derivative is the slope at the exact moment you're doing the little deal on a graph. I don't know why it exists. If it's mocking a slope as you may not know, since they're irrelevant to your lives, is how much a line is increasing or decreasing on a curve.
No, I said increasing or something.
I think you're
That I
Jared's.
wrote.
Hey, is that what you
Hey, anyone else want me to read theirs?
Just let me add some stuff and then I'll be
I
prepared.
talked about derivatives right after I talked about
Okay.
English that day.
Yeah, I wrote down mom, please explain.
And there you go. Alright.
What do you put?
Alright.
Did you not record any of that?
I did, record it all. Alright, now hey,
Oh, you got it.
okay. Let's go
Wait,
through
no,
this.
I have one
Okay,
more thing
hey.
I want you to read. How would you explain to your parents?
Okay.
No, wait, I get
Alright, now,
Yeah,
hey.
you do yours.
Okay.
Do it to
One more.
Christian, do it to Christian.
Yes.
Okay, I'll explain like I'm explaining to Christian. This is good.
One more.
Is it good?
Yes.
If it's mocking,
Oh.
you're leaving.
Oh.
Alright, here we go. Okay, so if I was explaining this to my son who really only knows the numbers,
He's
okay?
totally smarter than me.
Your kid is so smart.
Okay.
Mr. Ward.
First, if I had to talk about what a derivative is, I would explain it as it's how fast you're going. Okay, that's the first thing.
Oh, none of us.
I think I should that.
Okay, now,
Wait.
so if you were to ask, so he would probably mimic going fast, he'd try to run around a little bit, but then I would explain it's how he's changing his speed. So that's a big thing. How he's changing his speed. So he goes slow to fast.
That's
Decelerating and accelerating.
There you go. Okay. So
There you
it's
go.
the change of rate.
Or constant.
Change of rate
I don't think you
Change
said-
of,
if you said
I was saying
rate, you wouldn't
change
know.
of speed, and that's how I explain it.
should say
Okay, I wouldn't probably say velocity to my son. I would say speed, right? Velocity is a great word. Now, a lot of you said slope. What I would say is how fast you're going or how you're changing your speed on on a hill. That's how I'd explain it to him. So,
Rolling it down the hill though.
You should
Not running.
We should probably have where we have you bring your child and try to teach him how
hey, I can record it and then I can show you.
Mr. Ward, this is inaccurate. I've
Try
talked
to
to
take
your
your
son.
calculus and literally what we're doing.
Mr. Ward, this is inaccurate. I've talked to your son. He would be asking a whole lot more questions about this.
Oh, he definitely would.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
say,
say- Probably ask what the
Now, hey, your definitions were really good. Like these up front that I read for the most part. Some of you had really good ones as well.
I did.
It's a rate of change or slope, but it's on a curve. You guys nailed it. It is how you're changing your rate of speed or velocity on a curve. Now, here's what I want you to do. On your paper, I want you to write down this formula. This is one that a couple people actually wrote. I think it was Nielsen was the first one I saw that had
Oh
it.
my gosh, I cannot do
Okay.
it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I want you to write this down.
What is
I have
this? The formula that we
This
write
is the
down
actual
9
formula that we use to evaluate.
Yeah, why do you use different, wait, is that an H or a K?
That is it.
We already had that laid out.
Yep.
Sorry.
Or
Sorry.
another.
Okay. I didn't realize I put a K in it.
You
Okay.
have written that all the time, like,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
What we're doing. Hey, I'll explain.
Let's go, yeah.
A lot of you were saying like an average rate of change, or I even saw one person, I think it was Leah, you put instantaneous. That was good. That is the correct term that we had to put. An instantaneous rate of change.
I put slope.
Okay, slope is a good one. Now, here's what I want you to do. On this problem, on this function right here, I want you to see, can you write down this formula? Don't even simplify it, just write down the formula for this. I just want you to write it down. Don't simplify it. Because I know it's big, it's long, it takes a lot of steps. I just want you to see, can you take this thing right here and plug it in so that we can eventually find the first derivative? Because that formula is the derivative formula, right? It's called f of, it's f prime
So
of
let's write
x.
f of x, I mean,
F-
x plus h.
F prime of x.
X plus h, x plus h. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's called f prime of h, now, or f prime of x, I should say. So, Drosy, to answer your question, the one question you asked, what is a prime? It was a symbol that we used, that was created by Einstein, that he used on his paper for a small notation, that would signify that he's finding the slope at that moment. He wanted a small notation on his paper so that he could instantly know if he was finding a function answer or if he was finding slope at a certain point. Because a lot of his stuff was finding the rate of change on a curve. Like he was doing a lot of stuff with interstellar space and the idea of a gravitational constant, and he was trying to figure out notation-wise in his notes. He was one of the first that was using symbols like this because he didn't want to have to write out the whole, like the word derivative or rate of change or instantaneous. He didn't want to write out that full word, so he just used a little notation.
So that is derivative.
That is a
What year
derivative.
was
That is the
this in?
symbol for a
Yeah,
derivative.
could you tell us a year?
Okay. Ooh, 20s, 1920s.
1920s?
Like the
Can you tell us a year?
30s.
So, War, would you say you were smarter than Albert Einstein?
Why
No, technically, you
No,
wanted
hey.
more.
Yeah, that's
Alright,
disrespectful.
This Albert Einstein.
Right.
Alright, now hey,
What about Sir Isaac?
okay. Once you have this written down, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your neighbor's paper. You don't need to hand it to them. Just look over at them. Do they have the right formula written down? Okay, here's what you need.
You run brackets and parentheses?
Oh, wait, we're supposed to have brackets?
H.
Do we need
Hey.
brackets?
Okay, what?
Do we need brackets?
No, if you have parentheses, you're fine.
Okay.
I have a
Okay,
bracket.
so, okay, brackets are good. If you don't have brackets, it's fine, you did parentheses. So here's what you should have. Something very similar to this.
Why is that not a bracket?
What do we have, plus 2x?
You're cheating like Woody. He won't teach us the easy way.
Alright, okay, here we go. That's what you should have, something that looks very similar. Now, if you had brackets, fine, but notice, what I wanna make sure of is that your neighbor has the x plus h in the right locations, that in the very front, this thing right here is your whole function, but a bunch of x plus h is plugged in where all the x's are. So you can see this. Okay, in the back, they better be subtracting the original function, and then on the bottom is just an h. What this is actually doing is it's finding the differences in the y numbers on the top. It's doing this. It's finding an average rate of change, but what we're doing is we're approximating how close of x's we're actually getting. They're putting the x's so close together that there is only a little bit of an h between them. Because the first x coordinate was x plus h, just a little bit of difference. And when they subtracted, you got h. That was, and what we're doing is we're approximating when h is so small it's nearly 0 for the gap between them. That's what this is saying. And on the top,
Ooh.
Yeah, always that.
okay,
Okay.
How hard are you pushing that?
really hard, that doesn't come off at all. And on the top, this is what we're doing. This is the difference in whatever your x1 was, and the difference between your x2. Now, where x1 and x2 come in, it's just the two x's you picked. So the first x was the x plus h. It was just the x, but a little bit more. And they're finding the difference
Oh my
between them.
gosh, this is awesome.
So that's the concept. Now, why we do this? So this is like the concept, like you're trying to explain to your parents. I know that some parents just don't want to hear that, or it's really difficult to explain to something that's not math oriented, like my son, for instance. But the concept is like the whole point of this is you are trying to find that slope, that that instantaneous rate of change on a curve, because what we're actually doing is we're doing this. So if you had a curve like that, and you want to pick a certain point on it that I want to find the slope, like this slope right here, it's called a tangent line, right? That's the slope at that moment, like the tilt it's taking right at that spot.
The tilt.
The trick is to pick dots that are really close to it. You pick dots that are really close to that point. I know that they're not close, but you pick dots that are getting closer and closer, because what happens is that your line, and this is called a secant line. Sorry, I drew a really bad line there. This line is called a secant line, and the secant line is nearly going to be parallel to the actual tangent line. Secant lines are a line that goes through a function twice. This is a tangent line, it only hits once.
What goes
Now,
through 3 times?
why did I want to get closer and closer to this dot? Is because number one, as I get closer and closer, what will happen between these two lines?
They'll get close.
Yeah, they get closer and closer together, but they eventually will appear to be parallel, and then eventually they'll be right on top where they're coinciding. That's why I want to get closer and closer and closer. What do we know about parallel lines?
They don't
They have the
exist.
same slope. They have the same slope. Okay, we're talking about Euclidean geometry. Okay, all right. So they'd be parallel, and what we know about parallel lines?
They don't exist.
Now they do exist in space. They're on the same plane. They don't intersect, and they have the same slope.
Wait, do you
And
have
so-
to be parallel lines in this though?
Yes.
Oh,
So-
that's ridiculous.
All right. Now, the thing is, why we're doing this, we can calculate derivatives, and that's what you're doing in your homework. A lot of the problems I said, I want you to ignore making tables. You can evaluate derivatives like I'm doing right here for a lot of those problems. You could plug in numbers into this derivative, to evaluate what would be the slope at this exact moment. Maybe this spot is 5 on the graph. So 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so you could find the exact slope there, because whatever this turns out to be, and you're gonna eventually plug 5 into it, you can eventually figure out what that number is gonna be. But you have to simplify this thing first. Divide it by h,
Then put
plug in 0 for all the
for
h's, and when you plug in your number, this number is gonna be eventually 40, let's see, it'll be 42.
42.
Okay, and that would be the slope at that exact moment. If you were to actually find the derivative, like simplifying that all out and then plugging the 5 back in,
How'd you do that in your head?
simplify that out, because certain things I know are going to cancel, so there's only certain terms I have to look for, and then plugging the 5s in.
Wow.
Mr. you are crazy.
Now,
You are crazy.
Now, hey,
okay.
okay, the last thing I want to talk about today, before I let you work on your homework today, is that, okay, we talked about evaluating derivatives, but the whole point of today was to talk about what it is. It's a change, it's a rate of change, it's instantaneous slope, it's how your hill is tilted, how the line is tilted on a curve, and it's how you can use this to predict what will happen later. Because if you know your slope is positive, what's happening to your graph? Well, it's going up.
Yeah.
It's positive. So the idea is that my values of my function are actually increasing. So if slope is increasing, you know your numbers are increasing. So that was a big part of that ball drop experiment that we talked about yesterday, was that you can use slope to predict what will happen at 50 feet. Because you know how it's changing. It's going up so many, over so many. And then the idea was that you can use that to figure out where 50 feet is down the road. So this will be how many ball bounces it took, or that's the time. Okay. All right, but that's the concept. Now, tomorrow, We're gonna look at, how to graph this thing. We're gonna look at, how to compare it to the original function. This is brand new, we've never done this before. Like actually graphing what slope is on a graph, just the numbers for slope. We're gonna look at that tomorrow, there's two ways to do it. And for the first time tomorrow, we're gonna look at the second derivative. This is one of the last things we have to do in this chapter, so we're kind of wrapping up the chapter. We're probably gonna be looking at as early as Wednesday next week. We'll have a test in here over this stuff, over first derivatives, second derivatives. So we'll start possibly as early as Monday, start reviewing. So be aware of that. Next Friday is the last cutoff date for homework. So any late work, missing fixes.
What are you handing over? Handing
Because I'm here to do
I'm gonna
it.
hand out those right now here in about
I-
2 minutes.
The retakes?
Okay. What? Retake. If we take a test on Wednesday next week, you have 1 week to take a retake, because the next week after a test, you have until Friday, that's the end of the quarter, but the retake I want it done in about 1 week. So, but,
What? I just wrote it out so I don't have to do the math later.
alright, now hey, I want you to be kind of aware when the end of the quarter's come up. It's not next week, it's the week after, that's why the cutoff date for all late work and missing homework is due by next Friday.
In 2 weeks.
That way, anything we do the week after is on the next quarter. Test, be ready to go. Homework is due tomorrow. You have the rest of the time today to work. I'm gonna hand out old papers to you.
Like a retake test?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Wait, so
You
which
don't get the
one?
short
What was the first day? What did we do?
You actually think that there is some object that's tangible that is,
If I learn the survey, can I do it on the test?
that has parallel lines?
No, because you have to show her.
You think there's actually a tangible object that has parallel lines in it?
Yeah.
Like what?
Anything that just the lines wouldn't intersect. So like your desk is a perfect example. Like,
But it's not
But if
exact.
you look down at it.
If I add a
they
tiny
will
piece of
let's
intersect.
have a perspective, like two-dimensional. Yeah.
No, I'm saying like in theory. Like if I were to put a tiny speck of
Three-dimensional
red on
object,
it.
eventually,
it
if
would
they're
eventually
to be extended, the limit would appear to be intersecting. So.
So they would intersect, so there would be no parallel.
Okay, but here's a real topic.
What
I
is your
turned in-
favorite Greek city-state?
Okay, I turned in homework that I made sure it was done, so I didn't break any grades.
The one we had executed, so you don't have that one. Like the one that we had is
When they she's like, I hope they're, I hope they're
What?
all, I was like, be worried about them. I mean,
You have to do it for.
Wait, so you're not getting those ones back yet?
And it goes back like right now.
Okay, but I'm in.
How are you putting the grades you're not making up the papers?
You made gain and read.
You want to see is that correct?
The only one I haven't checked yet
right, that's sub.
is.
You made gain like.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only one I haven't graded.
And then the 64 and 81.
What the heck, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry. I haven't checked out.
Hey, I made grades that when you need to fix in the grade book. Thank you. Because it's giving me anxiety.
Wait, are you actually doing this?
No.
So we're not actually on random.
Yeah, that's what they told us.
You're actually.
We're talking about this
Library
one.
zoning.
Thank you. So, this one was gonna be 5, but this one can't remember. This one is between 1 and 3.
Mr. Ward, who's your favorite basketball player?
Okay, we already did A and B together.
So which one is big? It's asking which one's big.
Can I, do you have your book? Can I use your book?
Oh, right, you're just asking, okay.
Bill Russell.
Here, what number is this? What number are you on? Between 1 and 3.
Of all time.
This time is the paragraph. If you look at the derivative, I think it's.
Well, okay, who's your top 5? You should be able to do that.
Michael Jordan, for sure. He's in the top 5 for me.
You see it? But 4, it's just like.
Pippin's good, don't get me wrong. He was an essential part of this.
Why do that?
I wouldn't probably put him in my top 5.
You don't actually do what Mark says to do.
Bill Russell, Larry Bird.
You do, what's
Kobe,
your F
James.
Kobe, he'd definitely be in the top 5.
How about AI?
So you do F from,
Allen
so you have to
Iverson.
do like the.
I gotta change games.
Those guys were good.
That.
But you
I can't
do
And then,
those guys.
okay,
and then after you find your
Something.
answer.
Except for AI can
and
stand by
and
itself.
0. team is zero.
You have to put the
It
zero
doesn't
in
matter.
for the.
Turn mark making all the time.
Exactly, so he's not top five player.
And then, okay, and then you put
They,
this.
they can still be top five, they don't need to
That's
win.
cute though.
I think that is true. I don't think you need a championship to be a top five player.
That was
Because you have
interesting,
Harrison
right?
Barnes that has like what,
Yeah,
two
right
championships and he's
Yeah,
never
yeah.
done jack.
I didn't
You're
say
telling
having
me
a
he's better
championship
than-
makes you a top five player, I said you have to have one to be a top five player.
What is that?
Are you telling me LeBron's career would be
It's
considered
on page 53.
amazing if he had
I don't
two
know.
championships?
I don't know.
He had never made
You're
the
bringing it up
finals.
to you, Dan.
His dad made the finals.
I'm just
But then I
saying
did
that
corrections on it.
I don't
Wait,
think
oh,
he
yeah.
Then I
can
did daily improvement.
How does that
LeBron
work?
and LeBron's argument is like, is he the best or not?
What do you mean?
Is he
You
one or
just
one
plug
point five?
X plus H into any X's that you have.
I thought we were getting,
Correct.
I thought we were getting, this sounds just like.
No, because that's the function.
I know, what do you think? You think you can be a top five player without a title?
So
You
you're
think you can be a top five player all time without a title?
Yeah, I think top five's a fair. However, I think you.
Are you guys doing like
You
boiling?
know, like,
I don't even know about 10. I mean, name one player that doesn't have a title that's a top
Really
10
enjoyed that, guys.
of all time. Because I don't think there is one.
Yes.
Top 20, I think that's where you start getting in there.
Okay, but
Or
you're like,
10.
you know, like, I don't.
Yeah, I'm not saying like you should
somebody
limitedly
out.
be like, oh, 50 because you don't have a championship. Like, Allen Iverson did great things. So,
Or there are many players that have championships for
I think it's page
life.
53.
Was it? Did you correct it?
Yeah, he was in the
what was the highest rated recruit of all
Let me
time?
use them
Yeah,
to make
he was
sure.
more hyped than LeBron James.
No, it was page
He's
one.
an ace
I
now.
thought.
He's still a good player.
Yeah, but, like,
He's not LeBron, obviously.
you think that he has more hype than Zion?
No. He was just the highest rated. He was literally on the 100 scale and he made 9.9.
Or maybe it was, but I think it was both.
Like, he was the highest rated recruit of all time. What do you think about Harrison Barnes?
I think he was a good player.
Did you ever watch Harrison and Doug McDermott play on the same high school team?
So she's like.
Wait. I had me worried I just changed it back. I was making sure there was, I was like, oh my god, this is the same technique.
Is he something?
Nope.
You put both up and I put both up?
Wait a minute.
Slightly confused. Just were if you put both up and I put both up. I lost you.
Wait, did you do correction?
Did you make the
Did you get both up? No.
Or
Did you get both up and count it wrong?
Or actually, eight.
Four X H squared is a thing.
What did I
That's what
write?
it is.
Both up.
That makes sense.
And I wrote both up.
Yeah, well,
You got it right one,
Again,
guys.
when the papers I'm handing back to you, you can always make corrections, strip back in.
It's all bent down.
I got 28 wrong, I got 8 wrong. Did
And
you
We
get
all have the same thing drawing except for yours is not wrong and ours is wrong.
I missed
That
one. I
shouldn't
didn't
happen.
turn it on.
that? Shouldn't happen.
Did you explain to us? Did you explain to us what's going on here? Is it all on the same answer or two of us had it wrong one?
And the one guy.
It's because Mr. Ward knows that I'm superior.
So it's
Yeah, so
both
much, yeah,
down.
so much championship. I don't know.
Mr. Ward, do you have your top 5 yet? Because I've been waiting for a substantial amount of
Okay.
hours.
Did you tear my paper award?
No.
I don't know. I don't trust you. I haven't, I think he's doing cross country. I haven't like checked his times.
Lucas,
I
what did
think
you get on
it's
this
doing
side?
that.
Quick,
Someone was
50.
I don't know, I haven't, yeah, I haven't. What's that?
No.
That's what you
Well,
got.
I think he was like pretty fit last night.
You get 8 or 28, right?
That's the one that you haven't made the correction. I didn't get 28, but I haven't made the correction.
No, I can't.
But 50,
Yeah.
like, had any correction or not?
Yeah, I'm checking.
Trust me. I'm
Why
gonna
didn't
run
you write it?
my
Did you get a 40 out of 40 on this
On
assignment?
this, well, you knocked off like
One
3
is
of the
out of
problems that
40.
were red, and then you
Page
only
50.
took 1 point off.
Page 50.
No, I didn't get 100%.
What did you get?
I don't know.
What did you give her 7?
I don't know which
Yeah.
Did anybody get 8 and 28
I
right?
think we just rewrite
You
both up and
look
hope that it
pages
goes
on
into
Page 50.
Yeah, I'm confused. You took 15 on the top and only crossed out 2.
That's why I'm confused. How we
Because you didn't do half the problems.
Definitely not both of them. You got both up and the other
It
one.
might have been just the thing like you just didn't explain first.
Oh, which one?
Maybe both.
Yeah.
Maybe I just wrote down 1 point off because you didn't explain what fields are coming. Said both up,
Just
but
leave it.
maybe I had to say where they're going towards, like, or maybe they're going
I'm sure.
flat, maybe just
The word
give
that I
some
have, what's your
explanation.
favorite fear all?
Okay, did you plug 0 into H system?
Yeah.
What do you think that's what do you think that 7 is? 4 doubles for 3 years. Why do you
Wait, just wait, how do you do 4x?
But I put it all over my paper.
Oh, guess what? So it's right there.